I'm trying out some different intros. I always say welcome back. I think it's a lot of just welcome back to the show, but really thank you for being a listener. That's a big part of the Dan Time podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Dan McArdle. Thanks for being here. But gratitude is something that I want to emphasize because it means a lot to me. Not just how many people are listening to the show, but that you, yes, you're driving. I've said this whole spiel before. I need to actually come up with a new one. But yeah, you're at the gym. You're waiting on somebody. You're in a waiting room. You've got your AirPods in, and you're listening to my show right now. I appreciate you as a listener, and I don't take that for granted. This is what I enjoy doing. Is hopefully making a difference. And man, I could not be more pleased today to have a guest that this is a real alignment of values, I would say. And it just so happens to be a sibling, a brother of a guest that I think you all enjoyed from just a few weeks ago, Trey Williams. My friend Trey, before we got off the phone, I think some of the end of the episode chatter, he said, look, you've got to get in touch with my brother, Travis Dykes Jr. This is a big deal. And Travis, you're doing some great things out there, impacting people in a big way. We'll get to that in the episode, but let me just stop and say, thanks for being here on the Dan Time podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And I should also take a moment here. I was thinking about this today. If you are listening for the first time, Dan Time is usually, not always, but a lot of times it's me speaking to a fellow Dan, as I call it. As you've seen, some Danielle, Danny, Daniel. It's kind of the family of the Dan names. That's kind of the joke. But it's not a prerequisite for being on the show. So this is a wide umbrella, and if you're somebody out there doing impactful things, I'd love to talk to you. And so this is how we got connected today. Travis Dykes was to Trey Williams, which he checked the box, just being in my network. And here we go. I am rambling. I try to stop doing this, but man, old habits die hard. Folks, first of all, if you want to follow the show, at Dan Time Pod across most of the socials, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And if you'd like to email me with any questions, dantimepod@gmail.com. That being said, Travis, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. TravisDykesMusic.com. This will be in the show notes as well. But what are you doing right now, April 2024? What's on the front burner for you right now?
Oh man, probably.
And it may be multiple things.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of things right now. First of all, thank you for having me on. This is a really, really dope opportunity. I always get, so much energy from having conversations and things like that. Honestly, right now, there's so much on my mind, so much on my plate. But just the most current and recent, or I guess, thing that's about to come up is I'm getting ready to head to Australia this weekend for about 9 or 10 days to teach some clinics and also do a live recording with an artist there, playing some music and different things like that, recording an album. And so that's kind of like at the forefront of my brain, but there's like, even though it's only a few days until that happens, there's still so much I have to do right now for other things, because I don't know about you, but like whenever I do a trip or something like that, I'm always like having to do work for the trip, leading up to the trip.
Right. Yes.
That's my life right now.
Well, I can definitely relate to that. Travis, you, from what I understand, your interest in music kind of started around percussion and the drums and being a child, and maybe not unlike a lot of kids, where what's the first thing I can start banging on and making some racket and maybe creating some beats in my 5, 6 year old mind or whatever. So it started with the drums, right? Or percussion.
Yeah, yeah. So when I think I was around like 5 years old, I started getting interested, just like any child, at that age, just like, oh, so you can just hit something and it makes a noise. That was kind of like my start into getting interested in music, and then from there, it progressed to kind of where I am now with playing bass. But yeah, it started when I was 5, and I'll just give you a timeline, kind of what happened. So I started at 5 with drums, and then that kind of progressed into the next few years, learning some percussion, some congas, things like that, and then that progressed into my sister, Lakia. She got an acoustic guitar, and just like siblings do, I'm the youngest in the family, and so uh, she got an acoustic, and I was like, oh, I want to play it. I want to play it. And she would, and I just, because I just wanted to beat her, I was like, oh yeah, I want to learn her to play because she has it. And then from there on, I had really actually got interested in guitar after just, that wore off, and then started playing a little bit more and started, learning some chords and different things like that. And that led to me going and starting to play the bass, because the bass was kind of a mix of that guitar world and that drum world. It was like that perfect middle. And so that was kind of like my introduction into getting into playing the bass.
Was there ever a time when you started learning? Because I play drums not as often anymore, but I've always wanted to learn a stringed instrument, and the bass guitar would actually be the next instrument that I would like to play. Was there ever a time where you got frustrated in the early stages and it just wasn't coming along the way that you would like? Did you ever consider not uh, following that path with the bass guitar?
You know, honestly, the to give a little backstory, I actually didn't really get into the bass until I started playing at church. That was like a kind of my introduction into playing and doing that whole thing. And so the way the story goes is that I was playing like some guitar at the church, playing drums at the church, and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, I heard that overheard our music pastor, our music director, saying that we needed more bass players, and pretty much I was like, oh man, I saw extra bass back in the closet, and asked my pastor if I could borrow it, and that's how I got into learning the bass, and I started learning for services to play, for midweeks and all that kind of stuff. But to answer your question, as far as frustration goes, is that the first bit of frustration I ever had, my pastor had told me, because I didn't know how to play bass, and so I just knew that it seemed like it was easy to pick up. And so one of the things that was very surprising and frustrating to me was, like, my pastor told me when I got the bass, he's like, Travis, in 6 months to a year, you could actually be playing in service. And I was like, 6 months to a year? I thought I was going to be able to pick this up next week. And so, and that was honestly kind of the first frustration I ever had with playing bass, because I thought it was going to take forever. And so what I did is I started, hounding in like practice time and just working. I was a teenager, so I had all kinds of time. When I was a teenager, I thought I didn't have any time, but being an adult now, I was like, oh my gosh, I had so much time. And so that was kind of like when I started working through that. And so I worked really hard, I think about 2 months or so. And after practicing all that time, I played my first service, and that was my first time playing in front of people, playing in front of, with a band and different things like that on the bass. And that was kind of like how I, got started with that. But they always say this about bass, though, which is, something I've learned over the years as well, is that bass is like one of those instruments that it's easy to pick up and start playing, but it's hard to progress in and get and master. And the reason why that is because, it's everybody thinks about bass as like, oh yeah, you just play a note, you just play a note, or four notes or whatever, and you're just playing that root, that little, whatever that you always hear. But whenever you're trying to get to that expert or professional level, that's where it's just like, oh man, I actually have to have rhythm. you know, I actually have to know a little bit of music theory, and that's honestly, um, just the whole gambit of playing the bass is just going from not just being mediocre bass player to being, something that's actually a real, what they quote unquote call a real bass player, is one who's not just playing the bare minimum.
Right. So when you were, what came first? Going out and performing for audiences, or getting to a level where you could teach others, or a little bit of both? When did some of those opportunities to perform live begin to materialize?
Well, I will say the first opportunity I had was to teach. And that was honestly something that I never knew I was going to learn as much as I did from. So whenever I started playing when I was about 12 or 13 years old. That was when I actually picked it up. And literally the year, I think that same year or the year right after, I started teaching. I started teaching people, even though I wasn't like this expert teacher or anything like that. I just started teaching people because people were trying to help develop, some more, people and friends that were interested in learning. And honestly, that I'm so glad it fell that way. A lot of people feel, want to go out and just get in front of an audience as soon as possible and start playing and you doing shows and tours and things like that. But I learned so much about growing and grow in my playing, and also just like theory wise and everything about music because of the questions that were asked from the students I was teaching. And that's something that people don't really think about when it comes to learning and teaching, is that teaching actually is the almost like the fast track to learning whatever you're teaching better and faster. Because what you're doing is as soon as somebody asks a question, you got to be, if you don't know that question, you have to go look it up because you're the teacher. And so it's just like, okay, if I'm going to teach you that, you know, this thing, I have to be at least be able to go and find the answer for it. And so I started there and then went from teaching to playing live. I used to play like summer camps and things like that. And that's kind of how I got started into that. And it's of course playing in churches and church settings. Um, but then after that, I started getting a little bit more experience. And when I got some more experience, I started playing with some professional artists and different things like that. And when I say professional, like at the first level of this, it was like local level. I was playing with people at restaurants and different things like that, and my college friends. And then from that to playing with more professional touring artists that were actually trying to make a career of doing this full time. And then I went from that to moving to Nashville, to where, yeah, everybody's trying to do music, everybody's trying to make it, and that's where it kind of just changed my life with it.
Um, Now, in Nashville, like you said, it's not the easiest place to stand out. Um, how much does networking and just relying on your people skills, uh, how much does that help you? I mean, because some people they're just going to sink in that environment, right? If you're
Mhm.
not connecting with the right people, um, and
Well,
putting yourself out there.
yeah, I've heard so many different things before actually moving to Nashville and moving to a city where you're not the only musician, you know, that that's something that it's been told to me, like, all right, you got to make all these connections. You got to connect with this person. You got to connect with that person. If this person can't get you somewhere, then you don't need to connect with them. Now I'm like, no, no, no. And so what? So what I started to learn when I first moved to Nashville, I came in here with that mindset, and I started noticing I'm making all these connections. Oh man, I got this person's number. I got this person's number. I got this person's number. They work with this person. But then when started to realize, as I started to actually grow and get better as a musician and different things like that, is that those people who I connected to, those people I got their number, I was like, hey, I sometimes I would go get lunch or coffee or something like that. But I realized that those people with connections weren't calling me. They weren't asking me like, hey, can you play this gig? Hey, can you do this thing? Hey, can you do whatever? Which is what you want to do. That's the reason why you're connecting with them. But the thing is that connections only take you so far. They can probably get you like a little small opportunity that's kind of temporary. But what I learned is that what takes you to that next level and what really gets your network and grows your network is when you have friends, genuine relationships. Because when you actually have friends, what happens is that you're going to look out for each other. It's like if I get like this, incredibly huge gig or opportunity, I'm not going to go to someone who I barely know. I'm going to go to someone who I'm like, oh my gosh, I want this guy to win. This guy's a killer. He's so good, and I want somebody who I know I could trust. And so whenever I get opportunities like that, I go to the first people I always go to, even to this day, are people who I have a good relationship with, people who are my actual friends that I hang out with outside of just music. And sometimes, that's what you're trying to achieve. I mean, honestly, that's really what you're trying to achieve is that you're trying to achieve having a relationship versus just having a network. Because honestly, I always say it like this, really having a network is having a net to catch you when you fall. Because the thing is about having a net. A net is like, is something that we all need because we are all trying to go out here and take our chance at creating a career in music. We're not going to go out here and without a paddle and just expect to go. You need some help. You need somebody to help you with that paddle. You need somebody to kind of be a part of that. And so yeah, so when it comes to networking, I do think that's a part of it, getting to know people, but it's not in the way that you think. I think it's definitely all about creating genuine relationships. And I will say this, and just to kind of end this thought, is that sometimes when you relocate, it's not even just about advancing your career, but it's about building yourself up to a level to even meet the minimum. Okay. And so like I always say, when I moved to Nashville, I realized that everybody who comes to Nashville, Tennessee, and doing music is like the top from all the other cities they come from. They're like at the top of their game. They were the band, in their city. And then they moved to Nashville trying to make it. And so the bottom level, in Nashville is like the top level everywhere else. And so what happens is that because you just moving to the city and just moving to a location where there's people that are going to challenge you, it takes your level up just by moving here and just being surrounded by it. Like I remember I came here and I didn't even realize the impact it had on my life. I moved here. And then I went to a church service, just like church service. There was like, oh yeah, this Bible study or whatever. And I go there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best music I've ever heard. Like live music I've ever heard. And this was just a church. It wasn't even a big church or anything like that. And I started to realize really quick, wow, I've got to level up to be here, to even just be, because sometimes the waiter or waitress are better than you, as a musician. And so, yeah, no, so I think there's a lot of different ways and things that people say about that, but I would just say, genuine relationships and just letting the location build you.
I'm just so taken aback, and as soon as you said that about building a network, I think it gets lost on some people who maybe just they're not thinking that, listen, we're here for a bigger reason than just to figure out how Steve can get me to Joe so that he can help me do this. And then that's what I need done. People are not a means to an end. Life is about friendships. It's about being interested in other people, asking someone, you want to go have coffee, you want to go grab a bite to eat. What are you doing? When are you playing? Like if it's a musician, when are you playing next? I want to go hear you play. And to be interested in that person, not because of what they can do for you, but just because it's the right thing to do. And like you said, your network will blossom as a result. And in order for people to want to even help you, they usually, if they like you, they're willing to go up to bat for you. And in sales, they say no, like, and trust. Most people aren't going to do any business with you unless they know you and then they like you, and then trust is the final one. But great stuff there, Travis. I love that. I love that perspective. Now let's move on here to, and we could maybe move back as well. But as a YouTuber, in the beginning, this was not something that you thought this thing's going to really blow up. Take me back to the early days and when you thought, hey, why don't I put myself out here and start this YouTube channel and try to show people or teach people how to play bass?
Well, honestly, whenever I was starting learning how to play bass and different things like that, YouTube really wasn't a thing yet. Like it wasn't that came up later. And so what I was doing is I was learning from books, watching people like in person, actually watching somebody in person playing and different things like that. But what I started to learn as I was playing is like, man, the way that I learn things is a little bit different than the way other people learn things. And so what started to happen is that I would get these ideas, these thoughts, and I would just like be like, I wonder if anybody else thinks like this. And so whenever YouTube started to come around, I was like, you know what? I'm going to post a lesson and just see if anybody because I felt like if I was looking on YouTube or looking for something, this is something that helped me. And so what I did is I posted a video, and it was just like me in the living room of my parents' house. I think I was a teenager. I don't even know I can't remember how long ago was that. I can't even tell you how old it was, but it was in my parents' house. And honestly, I posted that video, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Didn't really look at it. And then I was like, you know what, let me post another one, and didn't look at it. I knew nothing about analytics. I knew nothing about anything. I didn't get on YouTube to like blow up and become a YouTuber or anything like that. I was literally just genuinely doing it because I was like, oh man, maybe I can contribute to what's happening here. And so I started doing that, and so I started posting a little bit. It was no consistency. It was just like every now and then I probably post like 5, maybe 10 videos. And all of a sudden somebody asked me a question. They were just like, oh yeah, you have a YouTube channel, right? And I was like, yeah. And I don't know how we were talking about it, but then they asked me like, so how many subscribers do you have? And I was like, you know what? I actually don't know. And so I went to look. I just, went on my computer, looked really quick. I honestly probably just 2 seconds, just look at the screen. It's like, oh, and I saw 1 and a 2, and I was like, oh, 12. Okay, cool. I got 12. And so I told them I got 12 subscribers. And then later that night, I was like, you know what? Let me go back and look at that. And I looked on there, and it's actually a 1.2K. I had 1,200 subscribers. And I had no idea, which if you don't know anything about YouTube, to get to the place where they'll pay you, you have to have 1,000 subscribers. And so that was like I didn't even know I passed that threshold. I never even, that wasn't like that thing, that zero to 1,000 thing, which is the hardest if you're a YouTuber or trying to do YouTube. That's like the hardest area. That's even harder than getting from 10,000 to 100,000. That 0 to 1,000 is a tough, that's a tough like subscriber count. But that's how I looked at that and I was like, oh wow, people are watching my videos. I had a few videos that had a few thousand views and I was like, oh wow. And so from there on, I just started posting. I didn't get serious about it for a while, like a while. I just like posted every now and then. It was kind of like my little self-expression for a little bit too, because I would go in there and I'll play stuff, play covers and things like that. Actually, funny story, when I was in college, I posted a video. It's a Tasha Cobbs cover. It was in my college dorm room. And the reason why I posted that video was because I was frustrated because I was wanting to play with the gospel choir so bad, but they let me sit in the practices, but they would never let me play. And so I practiced all these songs. I would practice, practice, practice. And I'd be at every practice, even when I had tests due, I was there. And they say, oh, you can play this one song. And then when it got to it to let me play, they didn't let me play. They let this other guy play. And I was like, oh, I was like so mad. I was so frustrated. And so what I did, I was like, I don't want to take all this time I spent learning this song and just, not do anything with it. And so I made a video, put it on my YouTube channel. I actually think it has like maybe 70 or 80,000 views now. But that was like something that was, it started to become a self-expression for me in that kind of way as well. So yeah, that was kind of like just a little bit of a gist of how I got even into it.
I started watching a couple of these videos, and here's what I think resonates with people, because there's so much out there. Any topic you want to learn about, presented in so many different ways, but within about 3 seconds, Travis, just trying to be unbiased, I picked up on the fact that this is a guy that I'm already in. I like him. I like his presentation. I like his demeanor. He knows what he's talking about. You kind of have that first 3 second. I don't want to call it like a sell, but it's like people have very short attention spans, and they will quickly move on to the next thing in their scroll. They will ditch that video in a heartbeat. But just for me, that was the impact I got. And I think that's a part of one ingredient of how it has resonated with people, is that there's a likability factor immediately. It doesn't take half a minute, which is an eternity for a YouTube video. But I'm serious, man. Like 2 or 3 seconds in, you're like, yes, this guy, this is what I believe he's an expert. I already believe it. I already like him, and just a lot's happening. So big compliment there. I don't want to, send your head up into the sky in a balloon. Some people, I think, but but people have told me, well, what's that line? Don't blow, don't make his head big or whatever, or there's a saying or something, but I mean it. So,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
um, and then, it's things that I think how to play, bass in different ways. I don't have the clips at the ready here, but how to improve your slap bass overnight, gospel bass, how to play, are bass amps still relevant, taking your slap bass from beginner to pro. And then, man, you got a video here, making a $100 bass sound like a $1,000 bass. If I'm reading this right, over 500,000 views from a day in the life of a church music director, touring perspectives, what it's like on the tour bus, the grind of the tour bus. I haven't even cracked into half this stuff, but But how exciting. And I'm really happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It definitely is a fun journey that I'm very, very grateful to be able to be a part of.
Now I understand like a few years ago that you had a moment in a music store where you ran into one of your YouTube followers. This is like one of your first followers, or you kind of surpassed um, a threshold,
Mhm.
and then you met some guy for the first time. It was where you were like, "Oh, these are actual people that I'm impacting. It's not just a number."
Oh yeah, that was
But
honestly, that's
take me back to that story.
yeah, so that was I was actually in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I'm originally from or grew up. And I was in a guitar center. I was there visiting, I think I think I was in college actually. And I was there visiting and I went to a guitar center just because that was what I like to do, just go and play these instruments that I couldn't afford. And honestly, I was sitting there and I was playing and this guy came up to me and he's like, "Do you do YouTube videos?" And I was just like, uh, yeah, how do you know that? Like, and then and then he's like, I think I follow your channel. Do you do like lessons and stuff? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, dude, can I take a picture with you?" And I was just like, and that was years ago, but that was one of the first moments I was almost like validation of like, okay, people are actually watching because I think with social media, a lot of times, especially as someone whose career is mainly off of social media, not mainly, but is a big proponent of what I do is off of social media. Everything is just about numbers. It just looks, everything is numbers on a page. It's like, oh man, how many views did this do? How many watch hours did this have? How many comments does this have? But you never really think about it as real people. And that was the first time I think in my my career doing YouTube, I was just like, oh snap, these are actual people. When it's 1,000 views, that's potentially 1,000 people watching this video, And so that was like one of those things where I was like, wow, this is actually impactful. And I think what changed and shifted in my mind from that moment was that I needed to be more serious about this. That this is like something that is actually impacting people because then from then on, just to add to the story, um, some years down the road after I really gotten serious about YouTube, which was probably towards when I was about to get married, about 5 years ago, I had like this reality like hit in my head of like um, that I didn't want to be doing gigs my entire life. And I was like, I have this little YouTube thing. I used to have a music school and things like that. And so, but I had this that reality hit and I got serious about doing it. And I remember there was this person I met. There was this guy, I was playing an event and I met him and he told me, he said, because of what you've been doing on YouTube and the videos you put out, he said, I went from not playing the bass to playing the bass at 4 different churches and also traveling and doing it as a career based off of just watching my videos, which for me, I don't ever like to, like sound like I'm being boastful or anything like that. But that really just kind of, changed my life in the sense of realizing, hey, this has a deeper impact than what you think. Because and this is, not trying to get preachy here, but the thing is with social media, a lot of people don't realize is that even though it is about numbers, it is about that from learning growth and different things like that. You know what you put out there, the creation and the message that you put out there can impact people more than even if it's a small amount, even if it's just 1,000 followers, if it's 5,000 followers, that doesn't, your influence is so much more important than just numbers. And that's something that I started to realize is that my influence is started to grow. And the thing is that whenever I say something, now people are listening. And so that's a shift that started to happen that changed it changed my whole perspective of everything. Cause I was like, okay, now if I'm going to tell somebody to go buy something, I need to make sure it's actually good. I actually need to, you know, I'm not, it's just like if you're the CEO of Apple and you tell people something, it's like, okay, well, people are going to they're going to listen, And so you want to make sure that you're protecting your influence, but you also showing, important that it's valuable to you. And you don't want to just, flaunt it and just jump on whatever's trending on TikTok or whatever. But just think about what is your brand, what are you doing? Because this is what's impacting people.
Wow, I like how you're in touch with the influence that you have. I mean, because you are an influencer, you don't want to just arbitrarily start acting a certain way or changing your message. And because these people they like you. They, like I said, they trust you, and they're all in. And that's great that you see it on that level.
Mm.
And it's not just about, people ask me at the beginning of this, I call it a project. I mean, it's my podcast, but people have asked me, well, how can you make money at it? And really, what I've grown to love about this podcast is just the fact that anybody listens to it, and if they do, that it makes them happier for that hour or that day, or pick them up in some way. They feel like that it's just bringing enjoyment. So I'm not trying to change lives. I'm trying to brighten days, I guess. And if anything else happens, then that's great too. But that's the purpose. And people listening, there's all kinds of things that you can do. It doesn't have to involve media, doing a show, having a YouTube channel. There's all kinds of things, small moments in life when you encounter other people that can make a big difference. I talk about that a lot, but Travis, I'm just so enjoying this conversation.
Me too.
uh, Now I got to ask you, because I feel like I'm a pretty positive person. I do get down sometimes. Everybody does. Everybody encounters setbacks. I got to ask you how you reacted a few years ago. I guess you and your wife are on a trip to Disney World, and I guess she noticed, and you probably noticed that something wasn't quite right there. And tell me what was going on there, and what those next few weeks and months were like when, wow, I got something to deal with here that this wasn't on my radar.
Yes, yes. This is something, honestly, because I got married in 2019. Give a little perspective. I got married in 2019, and my first year of marriage, halfway through, because we got married in June, halfway through in January was 2020, when 2020, the whole 2020 conundrum. So you can't. Um,
Yeah.
but the whole 2020 conundrum happened, and honestly, 2020 for me, just to be honest, was about to be the biggest year ever. Like I was about to be going on tour with some of the biggest artists. Like I was like so stoked. Like April, March, my calendar was full, and I was like so excited about it. And whenever January hit, it just kind of just set. This was before we even knew that COVID was a thing yet. And whenever January hit, it changed everything. So right after New Year's, me and my wife and some friends went to. It was like our first trip, married, and we went to Disney World. I've never been to Disney World my whole life, and so I've always wanted to go there. Went there, and man, it was awesome. But there were some incredible things that happened, but something happened that kind of changed my life. So I think we were day two. We were going around the parks. We were, just doing the whole thing. I felt super sluggish. I was like, I couldn't stand that long. And and I just like, I was getting super exhausted, going to the restroom literally every 5 minutes. And my wife was looking at me. She was like, "Is something wrong? What's going on?" I mean, this was like the most mixed emotions because we were the what do you call it? We were like leading the parade at Disney World because they chose us. Like they only choose like one group the whole time. This was like the same day. Okay, so I'm like the grand marshals. That we were the grand marshals of like the parade at Disney World, and I was like, oh my gosh, my first day at Disney World, and we're grand marshals. It was like so many incredible memories. But then I started feeling this, and my wife was like, "Hey, something's going on," because it kept going on, and so we went to the urgent care after that, and the doctor told me that uh, I had diabetes, and that was something I never knew was happening. I did not know that what was going on, and my sugar was like at 389 or something like that, and in which it was really high at the time, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't really know how impactful that was. And so she told me that, and that just kind of rocked my world. you know and so that was kind of like what happened when we went to Disney World. And there was just a whole lot of other things that happened, and this was just kind of how the year started. And so I was like, okay, all right, let's what am I going to do? And so I think I get this from my parents. My parents are very like strong go-getter, type people. Like they're very uh they just have like a lot of discipline in what they do, and they're really strong. And so I was kind of stubborn too. And so what I started doing was when I got home, I like completely cut out all sugar because I was just in diabetic range from what they were telling me, my A1C and everything. And so I was like, my doctor told me, he was like, hey, if you lose some weight, you could probably get rid of this. And I was like, okay, cool. I cut out sugar for 2 months, 2 or 3 months straight, just like no desserts, nothing. And my doctor told me literally, he said, hey, don't just cut sugar cold turkey because you can't like keep up that lifestyle forever. You're gonna have to bring some kind of sugar in your life at some point. And so of course I didn't listen to the doctor, and I did that. But what happened is I think I lost about 20 or 30 pounds within those 2 or 3 months. And my doctor said, man, whatever you're doing is great. And so what started to happen, and I didn't even realize it at the time, is that because I did that little stint of like not having any sugar, it changed my palate. And so because of that, I started to not want as much sweet things. I couldn't eat as much sweet things. And that led me to losing about, I think, close to 100 pounds. And so, which that was, but that was over the past like year or so, that entire year of doing that. So that was kind of how the year started. But yeah, there was like quite a start of that year. I don't know how far you want me to go into the story because this could go on.
Wow. Now, at any point, did you think, oh, this is such a drag? Why am I having to deal with this? Um, or did you just approach it like, well, I mean, I can't believe you, even against your doctor's advice, you cut everything out and probably, went through those physiological um push and pull feelings or whatever. Like, gosh, I really want a Hershey's bar right now or whatever it is, but I'm just
Oh,
gonna leave it alone.
yeah,
But
mine was ice cream.
did you oh yeah. Oh, I love some ice cream. Um, but I guess did you just kind of roll with it?
Yeah, you know, there was something that my wife actually was the one who influenced me on this. But early on in our marriage, she was really, or actually, I think we were dating. She started going to, I guess one of her friends had lost a lot of weight, and she was like, "Hey, how did you lose weight or whatever?" And she had said, "Oh, she went to a therapist and they, talked about it and changed her mindset about food. And so ever since she told me that story, I looked at my situation completely differently. And honestly, what I started to think about is this whole aspect of um, what is my mindset behind food, and that's what changed my life. Because a lot of times when we eat food, we only eating for pleasure. We're not really thinking about what it's doing to our bodies, how it's affecting our brain, how it's affecting our performance. And so what started to happen for me is that I'm like, okay, yes, there are times I could eat it for pleasure. I could have that little bit of ice cream here, or whatever. But then I started to realize, as I was going through this, I was performing better. My mind was a little bit sharper. And I was like, huh, okay. And then as I started to go through this own journey myself with this, I started to understand, like, okay, this is the reason why people who are high performers, like the, Steve Jobs or the Mark Zuckerbergs or the, all these crazy high CEOs, when you look at their lifestyles, what they're doing is they're focusing on their performance, because the level that they have to carry and the level that their mind has to think about is so much, is that's what their job is their brain. Their brain is the job. And so if you don't take care of your brain and make sure you're watching how much stress you're taking on, and working out and making sure you're focused and different things like that, like if you're not working on your health, then you won't be able to achieve that level of success. Because once you don't go from just, being lazy to being, a multi-billionaire CEO, like there's a reason why there's a separation. There's such a far separation. And so I started to realize that over, this time period of, going through diabetes and different things like that. And so I was like, oh wow. And so I started to notice that my performance started to be better when it comes to doing YouTube videos. I started noticing better ideas, and I think that's what started to attribute to myself, like, okay, this is actually what I needed to do. And I honestly think it was, because I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, and so I believe it was like kind of God's way of telling me, hey, if this is what you need to do to, level up what you're doing. And so that's honestly what I feel like I got from that.
Wow. Yeah. You never know what's ahead of you tomorrow, next week. Um, it's we should always expect the unexpected, and I love the story there and how you've dealt with it and kind of how you've spun it into a positive. And you're right. Really high performers, they don't just eat cheese puffs and double quarter pounder. I mean, they're double cheeseburgers and whatever they just want to shove down. Like they have pretty structured meal plans. I would think most of them do. Um, so a lot of fruits and veggies, and so I like the story and how you've reacted, and great stuff there. Travis, also, I don't want to get too far here without mentioning the book that's on Amazon. Is this right? Titled "Do It Yourself: Base
Yeah,
Method."
yes, that's a book that I just finished and released with Hal Leonard, which is a music book publisher. I just released it last May, 2023. Um, and so yeah, it's out there. Basically, the whole concept of the book is taking you from not knowing anything about the bass to being able to play with the band by the time you get to the end of the book. That's kind of the whole goal. It comes with DVDs. It has music, a lot of common songs and things that you may have heard before on the radio and different things like that.
Now, also, folks, if you go to the website, travisdykesmusic.com, that's Travis, common spelling, like my brother, which I didn't even mention. We're so far along here. My brother, Travis, has finally appeared on the show after many months. So the second Travis on the show today. I love it. I just love talking to another Travis as well. But uh, go to the website because you've got a an apparel line. Is that correct? I
Yeah,
guess I call it that.
yeah. I've got some basically it's some just kind of some fun merch. The way I kind of started the idea for it is that I want to make, you know, good quality merch and good quality clothing for musicians that are traveling that they can wear and that they could use that's minimal. And so if you look at any of my designs, it's like a small design, like the shirt I have on right now is actually one of my designs, which is just like a small little, logo right there in the middle. It's just so it's easy to put with other things and it's not too overbearing because that's the one thing that I never really liked about a lot of, clothing designs and stuff. So, but yeah, I have that on there.
Um, Travis, I hope this question isn't too generic, but who are some influences, people, um, bass players that you've liked for a long time, or maybe somebody that you've just kind of picked up on in the past few years? Do you have some guys or girls that are like, I celebrate everything they're doing?
There's a guy named Justin Rains. He's an incredible gospel bass player. He's impacted me a lot, definitely over the years of being a bass player. But there's another bass player as well that's got a completely different style, completely different world. Is Pino Palladino, which he is a bass player. He plays with the Who. He plays with the John Mayer Trio. And so like he's incredible, incredible. And if you're a bass player and you don't know who Pino Palladino is, you need to go search his name like right now. Incredibly impactful musician. But those are probably a couple of the, I guess, when it comes to bass players and things that really kind of inspired me over the years, as far as just like, people to role model after in my playing musical ability.
Couple more questions here. Gosh, if you're up for it, Travis, we're going to have to do a part two. Um,
Oh yeah,
who knows
sure.
if it'll be back to back? Maybe we will. How about this? The first time that you got a touring gig and you're traveling around and it's a whole new experience. Were you nervous about the whole thing? Um, were you nervous about just the stage performance, or were you like, this is fantastic. I'm so thrilled to just finally be doing this and being up in front of an audience. Like that first time, what was it like?
Um, you know, it's funny because there's a few different levels of this to me. There's ones because I've been playing in front of people since I was like 13, but it's a completely different world when you're doing it for money. When you're doing it to get paid, whole nother world, whole nother world. Um, and so I will say one of the first times I was playing, did a tour with a signed artist, and that was the time I learned so much because we were traveling, playing these opening sets for big artists, opening for big artists and doing these things. And I remember I started to realize we're traveling and doing all these different, being in the airport, going to the hotel, traveling in a van for out like 90% of the day. And we are only going across the country to play a 30-minute set. They were only going to play 30 minutes of music. And I was like, wow, that was something that impacted me so much because I was like, oh wow, so this is I've got to learn how to just hang with people pretty much the whole time. And honestly, that was like something that changed a lot for me. But I will say, as far as nerves go, I was nervous, of course, because nobody wants to like, mess up on stage, especially if you're getting paid for it. They're like, oh my gosh. But people realize that you're human. I realized that over the years. People realize you're human. That's the whole point of having this, going to a live show is that it's not just a track that's perfect. That's part of the experience. Now, of course, you don't want to make that like a normal thing. Like you're consistently making big mess ups or anything like that. No, no, you don't want to make that a normal thing. But if it happens occasionally, you just roll with it, and it's a part of the experience. And that's something that's great. And when it comes to nerves as well, is like something I've actually told people before is that even to this day, I just still get a little bit of nerves going on the stage, even though I've been doing this full time since I was 18 years old, and I still, to this day, will get nerves. But what I've started to do and what has changed about it over the years is that the energy you get, like those nerves, and it's like you're like, okay, you get this little jolt of energy and adrenaline going. At first, when you're young into being in front of people, you don't know what to do with that adrenaline. It's just like, what do I do? But the more you do it, you start to learn how to channel it. And then the way I started to do it is I started to channel it as focus versus channeling it as just spontaneous energy, just like to go wherever, because I think that's the way when you're younger, that's what your mind just goes to a bunch of different things, a bunch of different, whatever. But over the years, what I started to do is learn how to change my mind to just use that energy to focus on what I'm doing and to focus on the job and what I'm supposed to be doing in that moment. Because when you do that, then it just makes it so much easier to everything to feel natural. Like if you wanted to walk on the catwalk, oh my gosh, learning how to walk on the catwalk, that was crazy. Go and play in an arena show, and you're walking in the catwalk, you're looking at all these people, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm playing the bass. Oh, okay, I gotta look. There's so many different things, that to come with it. But that's where those nerves, you start to change your mindset to it. It's like, okay, I'm here to do this job, and I'm just gonna channel this and make this the best show or concert out that I've ever done.
How about, are you connecting with people in the audience when it looks like they're having a good time, and you do the eye contact and the big grin?
Yeah, no, that's actually
How
funny.
much fun is that?
Sometimes that, for me, I'm not like, my personality is not like one where I'm just like, I just want to just, you know, crowd surf or something like that. That's not definitely not my personality, because my personality is more of like, I want to make sure I get every single note right. But that's something I learned. I learned definitely playing, with signed artists and different things like that in the professional world. It's about the whole feeling. You got to move. You got to go. You have to connect, and that feeling of looking at somebody and they're looking at you has put me at a standstill before. It is just like I'm playing, and then all of a sudden, there's just somebody who's just sitting there, and they're just looking at you, just right in your face, right in your eyes, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with that? And honestly, that I will tell you that it's fun once you get over that, and you know there's going to be some weirdos in the crowd, but sometimes it just kind of hits you like different. It's like, oh, all right.
Oh man. Yeah, and then you've, after the show's over, um, do you have any sort of routines for how you step down from that adrenaline, and are you ready to just call it a night, go to bed, or do you
Yeah,
know, just, how do you relax after a performance?
you know, pretty easily, because usually that day is a lot. And so it's because it's kind of like going and doing something stressful. Like you're building it, you're building up to this moment, building up to this moment, and then it's just like the moment happens, and you're just like, oh, it's like your body finally relax, and you could just like crash. Usually, what happens is that at the end, depending on if I'm playing a festival or what the event is, I usually want to go get something to eat and then just crash, you know. And sometimes there's moments, actually now with certain artists, where we do like the whole band, not just the artist, would go to the merch booth and sign and take pictures, sign autographs, take pictures, and different things like that. And so that could be sometimes a little draining, but that's sometimes a part of it. But it really, honestly, for me, I could just eat a cheeseburger and go to bed, which I don't eat a cheeseburger. We're talking about healthy things. But I do like usually eat something and just crash.
Well, Trey, well, I had Trey on my mind because that was my next question. Travis, um, I gotta mention Trey here, your brother, and your connection. I know you guys probably don't get to hang a whole lot. What's it like when you get together now? I know he's super proud of you, and how do you guys get along? What's it like when Trey and Travis are hanging out?
You know, that has changed over the years. It's always like this dynamic because me and Trey's 14 years different. Like we have a 14-year gap between us.
Oh,
And so there's always this big brother, little brother dynamic, dynamic always.
yeah.
Um, and so I think it's been great, and it's changed over the years because now I feel like I've kind of earned a little bit of respect from him, which is awesome for me because I my whole life I've been trying to earn respect from my big brother. And so, but I was actually thinking about this because I figure you may ask the correlation and about me and Trey. Uh, Something that I don't even know if I've ever said it on a podcast before, but my brother actually, because he went to the military and he, went. I listened to the episode where you talked to him about like him joining the service and everything. But the other side of that, in my perspective, was kind of a little bit different. It actually is crazy because I didn't realize how impactful um, indirect influences are, indirect, things. And so this was an indirect influence moment, And so when I was younger, he went to the military. I remember, the whole story, my mom and everything, and everybody like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen. And I remember we went to Paris Island when he graduated. And I remember my dad was so proud. My parents were so proud. And in that moment, I was watching him march, with them and their graduation ceremony, and it just made me. It really sparked something in me to be something more, And so I was like, oh man, I want to try, I want to do that. I want to be confident. I want to do this thing. And just a little background on me, I was homeschooled my entire life. I was homeschooled from first grade all the way through high school, and so for me, seeing him in that scenario gave me this confidence to be like, hey, I don't, I can do more, than just, being what everybody else is being. And so he did that, and that was an indirect influence I didn't even realize until like I became an adult that impacted my life in a really, really big way. And so from there, I went to actually doing kind of a junior kind of military organization called Civil Air Patrol, which actually me joining that actually changed my life when it came to leadership and all the things that you would learn in the military without actually joining the military. Terry, and so I will say like that's impacted my life, and I think that's impacted our relationship too in a way that's kind of unspoken because the dynamic of our my life growing up with my siblings is that it wasn't we weren't always just like open communicators always, and so I think now becoming and pushing this open communication and also just being open about things like, hey, you had an impact on my life and I never told you this. That's kind of like how our dynamic is starting. It's almost like we're rediscovering each other at this point of like, oh man, yeah, that I didn't even know that about you. Like I was actually listening to the podcast when y'all were talking, and I was like, man, I actually didn't even realize that. And I was like, huh, wow.
Wow.
And so there's certain things that I feel like that as far as our dynamic over the years has grown, it's almost like because we become adult, like I'm becoming more of an adult. He's been an adult for way longer than I have. But there, because of that, I'm starting to realize, oh man, it's okay to say these things. It's okay to have these more open conversations. And I think honestly that listening to y'all's podcast showed me a lot. And I was like, huh, I need to, I probably need to, ask him about some of these things someday, because I actually didn't even know, being so young, what was happening in those moments.
Isn't that isn't that something? I mean, because I was doing the math, you must have been what, about 4 years old, five, when he's enlisting, and then um, just a small child, and he probably didn't fully realize the impact that just that moment was going to have on you. And wow,
Yeah.
I hope you skip past some of the stuff about the hot wings and the crystal burgers and some of that, but I toss some of those out from time to time. Um, my gosh, yeah, this has just been so enjoyable, and um, please don't judge me by the YouTube version of this show, because it is. I don't even have to tell you, it's not even on par. But uh, uh, but I hope that this has been inspirational in a small way, maybe a big way for a lot of you people listening. Um, Travis, anything else that we haven't covered? I'm sure there's something, because we've already agreed to do a second episode. But anything else you'd like to plug?
Um, well, I'm yeah, I'm always working on stuff. Definitely go check out my YouTube channel. I'm trying to, continue to post more and more entertaining content for you guys. That's not just around bass, but around just the whole music lifestyle as well. So definitely go check out my channel. And yeah.
Okay, a couple silly questions. These aren't going to get too crazy, but do you and I need to make mention here. I always try to include the significant others, but bear with me a second. I don't want to have to ask, but I may have to. Your wife's name,
It's
April. No, don't ever let me guess again.
Caitlin.
Caitlin. Okay, like a lot of couples, you probably have different interests, different movies and things. Are there movies that Caitlin likes to watch? Why was I was reading something that just April jumped out on my notes here, that Caitlin likes to watch, that you didn't think that you would like it, but like a movie or something that you're like, you know what, that's not so bad, or a show that she has wanted you to watch with her that is right up her alley, not so much yours, but you're like, okay, this is better than I thought it would be.
Yes, actually, it's probably gonna be crazy, but The Office. The Office
Yep.
was definitely something I didn't know about growing up or never really watched. The Office and Parks and Rec are probably the two things. At first, I was just like, "What is this? What is this humor?" And then it clicked, and I was like, "This is actually hilarious."
Yep. That's a good one. How about somewhere in all your travels? What's somewhere that you've only been once and you'd like to go back, but it's you're not sure when, you're busy, you got a lot going on, but you just had a really good time.
That's a great question. There
And
is, go ahead.
I bet some of the travel is probably a blur, right? When you're on tour.
Oh yeah, because you're like half asleep, most of the times when you're walking in these places. No, honestly, I'm trying to think. One place that was just insane. I like to go visit again. Probably London. London, England is
Yeah.
was so much fun for me. Definitely playing music in London is, man, it's like a cleaner New York City in my mind. And everybody's proper. It seems like, very posh, because their accents and different things like that. And you kind of feel like it's this comfort in, going to a culture that's very similar, but not the same. you know? And so I love that place. It's so much fun.
Okay, two more little lightning round questions. Do you enjoy sunsets, long walks on the beach? Um, well, I don't know why I was at the Fresh Market today and they have a really nice floral section and I was standing there amongst um the roses and the lilacs and the calla lilies and whatever else. But yeah, do you enjoy some of those things? The sunsets?
Yes, actually, I was actually listening to a podcast today. Um, it was a a neurologist or a neuroscientist, and she was talking about how nature is really good for, your sense of comfort and well-being, and like just mentally. And she was talking about the studies and different things like that. And honestly, for me, that's always been a big thing. That's the reason why, especially when doing, kind of a media type of path of what I'm doing, is like I've been in this room most of this week, not getting outside of the house. I've been recording videos, doing whatever business stuff, all this kind of stuff right here. And so sometimes it is the best thing to do for myself, especially, is just walk outside. And so I love walking outside. I love even going on hikes. Now my wife, she hates, outdoor stuff. It's just not her thing. But we're trying to come with a compromise there when it comes to that. But no, I like long walks on the beach, all of that stuff, getting into nature, letting the sun hit your face. I love all of that. That's me 100%.
I really like that. I think sometimes in our digital world, which there's no, I mean, you can unravel from it a little bit, but it is what it is. And it's a lot of fun sometimes. But I think that people, like you said, you, you can forget that, oh, shoot, I probably could, I'm so long-winded. This is insane, but like I could probably benefit from just stepping outside, feeling a nice breeze, going for a walk, feeling the sunshine, and just some of the health benefits of being at one with nature. Yeah, I think we get a little lost in the technology. It's great, but and you can take it with you, which is good too. But yeah, I like how you said that because we're busy people. Everyone, I think we're all very busy. We're inclined to be busier these days. But yeah, make sure you get out and enjoy your surroundings wherever you live. You've got some kind of nature trail or park. Um, okay, last question here. You saw my cat earlier. I had to get her out of the room, but um, anyway, do you like animals? Are you a dog or cat person?
If I had to choose, probably a dog person, but we don't have any like pets or anything, because me and my wife we're just too busy right now to do it. And honestly, for me, I told my wife this. I was like, I much rather have like an actual kid instead of, actually having a pet, because you're pretty much is from all, like, because we had, pets growing up. It's pretty much like taking care of a kid. So it's like I might as well have, instead of wasting this time. Well, I don't want to say wasting. If you're a pet owner, don't kill me. But you're not wasting time, but it's just you have something that will eventually be autonomous, be able to grow and do its own thing. But animals will always be dependent on you. So for their whole life.
Yes, animals are great. Um, I hmm, I grew up with dogs. I really like dogs, but I've had cats for a little stretch now. I have a 10-year-old cat and a couple kittens that we adopted as well, but it works. It works for, it works for us, um, but with animal adoption, there's a lot of good opportunities there to rescue animals, but be sure that you're pairing yourself up with the right animal because they require a lot of attention and maybe more than some people realize that they're willing to give. And I'm going to get in trouble for this, but Travis, I would be lying if I said that I don't sometimes think about the day where there's not any pet hair in my house. There's not any white cat hair on my navy blue pants. Like I do think about that time, and I don't want to usher it in. I like my animals, but yeah.
We babysitted a dog one time, and there was just hair everywhere, and it was just like a couple of nights, and I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, I don't know if I can do this.
Okay, well, we're getting way off track here, but that's what happens on Dan Time. Uh, Folks, be sure to follow Travis Dykes. He's on YouTube at Travis Dykes, Dykes, Instagram at TDykes, and TravisDykesMusic.com. So much to dive into. I think we covered a lot of it today, but I'm telling you, I want to pick right back up and explore some more of the Travis Dykes story. I love it, and I'm so glad that Trey came on the show so that we could facilitate this conversation. And man, I hate to pick favorites, but Trey, you got a lot to live up to for your follow-up episode if you're listening, my friend.
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
Okay, Travis, I'll let you have the last word here because otherwise I will just I'll just end in a garbled mess. And how about you send us out here?
Oh man. Well, I hope every one of you enjoyed today's conversation. And I will say this would kind of, if this is okay to end it like this. The one thing that if I could say something to leave with anybody who's listening is to not let your weaknesses, and your weaknesses in life be looked at as a disadvantage, but looked at as an advantage. Because anything that I've done over my life, anything I've done on YouTube, anything I've done in music, there's always been a financial thing. It's been I don't live in that location thing. I don't have this, and everything has always been looked at as a disadvantage. But really, honestly, when you start to look at whatever your disadvantages are as advantages, that's where you start to change everything in your whole scope of life.
Well said, Travis. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll pick right back up. Folks, you never know. We might go back to back. I haven't done it yet, but we might start. That's it for this episode, and we'll see you next Sunday on the Dan Time Podcast. Thank you, Travis Dykes.
Thank you.